in a lot of cases there, farmers would only want to go once with a herbicide on their winter wheat, so maybe holding on to maybe early next year and going with some, like you have a stronger branch of chemistry there to treat grass weeds on winter wheat. So you have the likes of your Pacifica Plus, your Monolith, your Broadway Star, and they'll give all good broadleaf weed control along with grass weed control in your winter wheat.
With almost all crops in the ground, the focus has shifted to keeping weeds and pests under control. While most farmers in recent years have moved towards using pre-emerge herbicides, there are still some crops that require post-emerge treatments. Also, there's a risk from aphid spreading BYDV, but control isn't always necessary. It depends on sowing date, the variety planted, and location. You're listening to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. We would really appreciate it if you could listen, follow, and give us a review on Apple or Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Getting the strategy correct for controlling BYDV will save time, but also benefit the environment. I'm joined by John Pettit, a tillage advisor in Wexford, to chat about BYDV management and control strategies. But before we hear from John, I'm delighted to be joined by Conor Kavanagh, a Teagasc tillage advisor based in Tipperary, to discuss weed strategies he's recommending to his farmers locally. So Conor, is all the planting wrapped up in your area, and how well have the crops established?
Yeah, Michael, I'd say 95%, maybe even 99% of the planting is finished and crops are quite well established, but there is a small percentage of maybe winter oats still to be planted. A lot of farmers in the area won't want to plant winter oats till the first week in November. And there's also a small bit of winter wheat still to go in, maybe after the likes of the maize or potato. So there's still a small bit of planting to be done, but in general, crops are all planted. They're well established, and there's winter barley, kind of anything between kind of growth stage 13 up to growth stage 21. So winter barley kind of went in reasonably early and is very well established.
And it was probably divided a little bit, Conor, because I know that in your part of the world, in South Tipperary especially, there's a tendency to plant that little bit earlier. I presume that's the earlier or the more advanced crops you're talking about. But then there was probably a good bit more crops sown maybe in that later phase towards the middle of October. Would that be right?
Yeah, Michael, I suppose the new Farming for Water EIP for planting the catch crops, that the catch crops had to remain in place until the end of September or the 1st of October. So that kind of maybe delayed a lot of farmers in planting winter cereals, which worked out quite well because October came so favourable in terms of planting. It worked out extremely well, and it did delay sowing slightly. So there was kind of some crops set the last maybe week in September, and most of them then were kind of into maybe the first and second week in October, and they're kind of progressing along nicely now because of the growing conditions have been so favourable.
Yeah, and tell me, just in terms of the different areas of winter barleys, wheats, and maybe oilseed rape and that, have you seen any major shift this year, a turn away from any particular crop, or maybe more crops being planted in the specific categories?
This autumn and the previous autumn have been quite favourable weather-wise for sowing winter cereals. So I'd imagine in Tipperary, any of the winter cereals area has remained quite static. It's quite the same, but there has been more of a switch. Definitely been an increase in the area of winter oilseed rape being sown, an increase in the area of winter barley being sown. Winter wheat and winter oats might have fallen maybe 5 or 10% just based on winter oats, on the demand for oats. And winter wheat, maybe farmers are maybe looking at alternatives like hybrid rye. A lot of farmers are finding the cost of growing winter wheat is becoming increasingly high, so they're maybe looking at alternatives to replace that winter wheat.
Okay, and with the oilseed rape, you said it's after increasing a good bit. I hear some reports saying it's probably gone up by 50%. Would it be that much down around your area?
I wouldn't say 50%, no, but definitely maybe 25-30% an increase in the area sown. I suppose the outlook for oilseed rape is quite promising. It's providing an excellent break crop, and I suppose farmers, when the weather was so favourable to get it in early, farmers got in early. It does great green area index on it at the minute, so it's going to even pull back the amount of chemical nitrogen that crop is going to need going forward.
I presume, Conor, would it be fair to say that for the earlier sown winter cereals, especially, that a lot of them probably got a pre-emerge herbicides, but probably maybe the later ones mightn't have got that. What are you recommending now for a post-emerge herbicide treatment on the likes of winter barley?
an awful lot of the earlier sown crops have been treated with pre-emergence, but there are some later sown crops, winter barley, that haven't been treated yet. So Firebird Met is one that a lot of farmers have in stock, so that has to be used up by the 24th of November this year. So farmers are maybe looking at going with that at the 0.5 a litre per hectare. That's working out around 10 or 11 euro per acre. And I suppose the earlier you can get on these pre-emergent herbicides, the better. There's also the Defy and DFF, so farmers can go with that with maybe 2 litres Defy and 0.1 of DFF, which was working out quite good on annual meadowgrass, but also that has to go on reasonably early. That's also working out in around between 10 and 12 euro an acre. Um, Other than that, then you have kind of the old reliables that have been there on the market a long time, the likes of your Tower at 2 litres per hectare. And Flight then, what was being used an awful lot in the past at 4 litres per hectare, but that's working out quite expensive this year, up on close on 20 euro per acre.
Okay, so that's probably off the menu for a lot of people. So
It is, and look, farmers are finding that the pre-emergent, it has to go on very, very early. A lot of results coming out from VJ and Oak Park are showing that it kind of has to go on before growth stage 21 to have any real effect on some of the grass weeds. So I suppose getting it on good and early and to get more bang for your buck.
and from in terms of the options you outlined there, is it a similar kind of scenario for winter wheat as well in terms of those options, or where for it's probably a lot of cereals gone in terms of a min-till where brome grass weeds might be more of an issue. Is there any tweaking on some of those options you were talking about?
Yeah, well, when you're looking at winter wheat, at this time of year, I suppose, I'd be maybe if you are going in with an aphid, maybe go in with something along the ones I've mentioned. But in a lot of cases, there farmers would only want to go once with a herbicide on their winter wheat. So maybe holding on to maybe early next year and going with some, like, you have a stronger branch of chemistry there to treat grass weeds on winter wheat. So you have the likes of your Pacifica Plus, your Monolith, your Broadway Star, and they'll give all good broadleaf weed control along with grass weed control in your winter wheat.
So guys, are you saying that guys aren't putting anything at all out, or they're going with a small bit of pre-emergent and coming back with that, or they're not putting anything out in the autumn?
No, a lot of farmers would have went with pre-emerge on winter wheat, and then if they have, say, problem weeds, the likes of brome in some of the fields, or ryegrass, they're following up with the stronger chemistry, the likes of your Pacificas, your Monolith, and your Broadway Star in the springtime.
Connor, we know it's important to treat crops early for BYDV. Are most of the crops in your area approaching that timing now?
As I said, there's massive variation with the crops in Tipperary. I suppose some are approaching growth stage 21, and there's more at I suppose the 2 to 4 leaf stage. So I suppose in terms of BYDV control, an awful lot of farmers in Tipperary are now using the BYDV-tolerant and BYDV-resistant varieties. So I suppose farmers are reluctant to go with aphids, but in high pressure years like we've had this year, that it is kind of recommending that farmers are going, I suppose, on the earlier sown crops with a two sprays, one at the 2 to 4 leaf stage and a second one maybe in early to mid November, weather dependent. And I suppose the key factor that I'm saying to all clients is to go out and actually monitor the crops, to get down on your hands and knees and have a look on the underside of the leaves. If you're seeing a large percentage of aphids under the leaves, it might actually warrant a spray. But there's also farmers that have stopped using pyrethroids for the last number of years, and they're seeing a massive increase in the number of beneficial predators, the likes of your ladybirds, your parasitic wasps, your hoverflies, and they're not getting a massive hit from BYDV, but they're also using other IPM tools such as ploughing, and they're also they're also using your tolerant and resistant varieties.
Yeah, so they're probably the major kind of benefit in terms of stopping the BYDV coming through. But I presume, Connor, they're still happy enough to see on the woolsey, I suppose, infection within those crops. But are you saying that they're happy enough to see that, but not really seeing much of a difference in terms of yield?
Yeah, well, I think, Michael, from the past number of seasons, we've seen that even farmers that have gone with one insecticide and two insecticides, there is still going to be a percentage of BYD in a field. The level of impact that's going to have on crop yield is kind of yet to be determined. It can be minimal in some cases, but it could affect significantly in other cases. But the farmers that aren't using pyrethroids, they are happy enough to see a small percentage of BYDV in the field, and it doesn't seem to have a massive impact on crop yields at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah, and there's going to be better and more updated advice for farmers in the coming years based on the research here out of Oak Park. Just a final question for you, Conor. You mentioned oats, not as much of those planted, this year, but for those crops that are going in, what would be the herbicide or the weed control that farmers are going to, or you're going to recommend to farmers?
Depending on weather dependent, there's very little grassweed control available on winter oats, so you'd more than likely be looking at your cameos or your cameo max there maybe in the springtime just for your broadleaf weed control, because oat is actually quite competitive with weeds, that it can actually suppress weeds without needing a herbicide.
So a lot of guys are going to wait till the spring then, are they?
Yeah.
Conor, listen, thanks very much for your time. And look, we'll be chatting to you again along the way.
No problem. Thanks, Michael. Thank you.
And now we go across to John Pettit to chat about strategies around BYDV. John, there's been two distinct planting windows this year, one around the 20th of September and again kind of from the early October. So with these very different planting dates and emerging dates, what's your recommendation for aphid control in these types of crops?
Drilling date is directly linked to BYDV risk. So if you've got September drilled crops, the risk of BYDV will be medium to high. So generally the recommendation will be you apply two aphicide applications, the first being at the 2 to 3 leaf stage in October, and the second application in early to mid-November.
And does that change? I mean, comparison to, we have some of these varieties out there that are BYDV tolerant. And some of them are coming along that are resistant supposedly, but BYDV tolerant ones. Are we going to change anything, or should a farmer change anything in terms of those standard recommendations because of those varieties?
I suppose there's been work done on tolerant varieties, Michael, within Teagasc, and results to date are quite promising. But we don't have enough work to be able to stand over and say that BYDV tolerant varieties are enough on their own to control the spread of virus. So the recommendation to date would be that you would still apply the advice as it was previously. So early drilled crops, when I say early drilled, September drilled crops would receive 2 applications of an insecticide, and October drilled crops would still receive 1.
And is there anything there within that in terms of going out and checking, or is it, whether there's aphids in your field, or is that even worthwhile at all?
Which is it's another part of an IPM strategy, Michael. So if you haven't got aphid in a field, what's the point in actually applying an insecticide to start with? It's another tool in your decision support system. And so you look at, is there aphid present? If they're present, obviously, if you can easily find them, and if they're present at numbers, you're going to apply an aphicide. And if you can't find aphicide, well, maybe you might delay or you might omit applying an aphicide.
Just in a general sense, John, while you're there, I presume all the planting is fairly well finished in your part of the world, is it?
The winter barley, Michael, is totally complete, as is winter wheat. Just a small little bit of winter oats still being drilled, but it's all done at this stage. Okay.
And have you seen much of a shift in the areas of each of those major crops?
There's been a huge shift in the area of winter oilseed rape drilled. Again, winter oilseed rape had a very promising year in the harvest gone by. Financial returns with the same crop will be quite strong. For that reason, the drilled area has increased. Malt barley with provisional figures and profit monitors as well is not as promising as it was in recent years, and farmers are turning to alternative crops such as winter wheat to drive profitability.
I know you are in the middle of running a series of financial benchmarking courses. I think you, if I'm right in saying this, I think you put a lot of importance that a farmer should be doing these benchmarks to see where their performance are. Why is that?
Well, I suppose, first of all, Michael, it's important to know what your actual costs are. If you were selling sweets in the morning, you want to know what the sweet costs, and you'd want to know what you're going to charge for it, and you'd know your margin then thereafter. So farmers know different, need to know, first of all, what it's costing to grow a given crop, right? And to need to know what the actual financial return from that crop is, and the margin then in between.
Tillage farmers are often I suppose, a tough crowd to try and get in to do some of this financial analysis. How are you finding some of your clients within that?
I suppose generally, Michael, the younger clients are, I suppose, an awful lot more conscious of costs, right? And they're not willing to work for anything at the same time. And even when the phone rings and there's queries in relation to what should I do with this or what should I do with that, there's always a stronger emphasis on actually the cost of a given approach versus another one. So younger farmers definitely have a different approach when it comes to costs. But I suppose the other side of it, the tillage end of it, from a financial perspective in the year gone by, it won't have been a promising year, and there's no better time to do the likes of profit monitor or a machinery cost calculator either.
Okay, so you heard it here first. If you were a client of John's or maybe any other client out there within Teagasc or elsewhere, we're always available. We've good tools there to help to do some of this financial benchmark. And listen, John, I know you're busy. Thanks very much for your time, and we'll be talking to you shortly.
Thank you, Michael.
So that's it today, and my thanks to John and Conor for joining me on the podcast. So as always, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague. And as always, rate, review, and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.